a lot of it goes to making your money work for you, right? That's the point.
Leveraging, absolutely.
Yeah. I've heard making $1 do the work of $4.
What I like to do is take a look at the overall picture. So when somebody comes in, we look at what we're working with. We look at the health issues. And those two things will help determine kind of the path that we can go on. As I mentioned, the healthier you are, the more options you have. The more money you have, the more options you have, which makes sense, I guess. But when you're looking at options, like I said, there's a number of different options. And most people don't know about these options. That's one of the reasons that I wrote this book.
Making the money work for you, there's a lot of tax-free options that you can get back, right?
Yeah, and people don't know about it. So they think either I got to buy a long-term care policy or I have to self-insure. And 25, 30 years ago, that's pretty accurate. That's not accurate today. We've had changes in the tax laws. The Pension Protection Act that was changed about 10 years ago allows you to take money out of specific language qualified annuities to create tax-free money for long-term care. And this is money that otherwise, if you withdrew, would be taxable. So, for instance, I'll have people come in that maybe they've owned an annuity for a while. And that annuity has sat there and has grown, and they've said, you know what, if I need long-term care, I'll just cash this in. We can take that same annuity. We can move it from their left pocket to their right pocket, create a new annuity that not only is going to create tax-free money that would have been taxable, but instead of maybe $100,000 of benefit, now we have $300,000 of benefit. So not only have you leveraged it 3 times, you've created a tax-free income flow that you wouldn't have had before. So again, it's just a matter of seeing what people have. And that's really what I enjoy doing this almost 30 years now, is looking at the big picture. It's kind of like a puzzle. You get to put pieces together, and everybody's puzzle's different.
Right. Everybody's unique.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting is when it comes to the long-term care, you'll find a husband come in and say something like, well, I just want to make sure that she's taken care of. So make sure that you have her taken care of. I want everything on her. And in the big picture, he's not taking care of her by doing that. He's taking care of himself.
Absolutely.
So even though the husband thinks he's doing something noble by, hey, make sure that she's covered. Don't worry about me. Well, we all know that generally the women are living longer than the men anyways. So all this coverage is on her, and something happens to the husband, and now she is, long-term care poor, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have clients back in Nebraska that the spouse, the female, the wife has a long-term care policy. She's had it for 27 years, I believe now. And her husband did not, second marriage, and he was a farmer. Ended up that they had to sell part of his farm to pay for his care. And I had talked to them years ago when they got remarried. And it's funny because my dad's a farmer, so I can kind of say this, but they have sometimes a false sense of knowledge on a lot of things. And he's like, oh, I've got this covered. I've got it taken care of. I'm like, okay. So turns out, they ended up selling part of the farm for less than what they probably should have gotten for it. They had the stresses of fixing up things, sheds on the farmstead, so it could be sold. And then he passed away probably 7-8 months after he had been in an assisted living facility, then eventually moved to a nursing home. The thing that people don't realize is it's not always just the financial standpoint, it's the emotional standpoint. The stresses of going through, especially at that age. Nobody wants to try to fix up a barn,
right.
and create an environment that somebody's going to come in and do an auction to sell part of something that you're hoping to pass on to generations. So what the LTC does, whether it's life insurance with LTC benefit or the annuity with the LTC or traditional LTC, what that does though, that gives you that peace of mind to know I've got this side covered. I'm not going to have to liquidate that asset. I can pass that on to my kids. I'm not going to have to sell the farm. I'm not going to have to do these things. And from an emotional standpoint, that is invaluable because stress, as you probably know, is one of the leading killers for us, whether it's heart attack, stroke, whatever. Just having that coverage and that peace of mind for a small piece of your total assets to ensure the rest of those assets and make sure you don't have to go through that, that's worth a lot.
Oh, that's a great point. When you're planning, I mean, you're buying the peace of mind, but that peace of mind is a huge stress reliever, and it lowers anxieties because people toss and turn at night. Especially
Absolutely.
if you have a family, I can't tell you how many times I've tossed and turned at night going, oh my gosh, I've got 2 kids in college. What am I going to do? Things like that. And getting that peace of mind is a huge, huge deal.
And that you bring up a good point because let's say you have kids. Decades ago and generations ago, kids took care of the parents. And it was the number one, kids and family were the number one providers for long-term care. And that is starting to shift. Now it's Medicaid is the number one provider. Problem is the families are not around anymore to take care of those kids or take care of the parents. So, the kids have gone to, they might live in Florida, California, and Texas.
Right.
And you live in St. Louis. So who's going to take care of dad? And when you have that long-term care, you have benefits like home health care and assisted living. So you have other options. Instead of just going in a nursing home, you can get care at home. But if you're not getting it from your kids, who are you going to get it from? So as a child, having that long-term care is huge because you're not putting the pressure on your kid to say, are you going to, quit your job? Are you going to move here? Am I going to move in with you? Do you have room? Are you raising your own kids? How's that going to change the dynamics of your life? You're alleviating all those stress points.
Sure.
And they're out there. And anybody that has kids knows exactly, what I'm talking about.
If you have a parent come live with you who needs long-term care and things like that, it's somewhere in the area of $400,000 to $600,000 that it's going to cost over that time for lost
wages.
Yeah, the lost wages for the in-home care, everything. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that's for the caregiver. That's not even for the person who's getting the care.
Right. Yeah, and are you qualified to do that? You might be originally, but not only does it come down to the medical qualifications, but there's a lot of things that you don't want to have to do, and your parents don't want you to have to do them for them.
Sure, absolutely.
And it's so much easier all the way around for everybody if you have a paid, trained professional to do those things. So, it's interesting, the dynamics. You mentioned your family. My dad's the oldest of 15 kids. So I have an aunt that's my age. And they're spread out all over the United States now. My grandma, who lived to 92, was in a home for about 10 years. Fortunately, she had coverage. None of those 15 kids had to worry about taking care of their mom. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of people to remove that risk off the table.
Do you recommend that you involve your kids in the financial planning, in the long-term care planning, so they know what's going on?
I do, and that's kind of an individual thing. Some people, and I don't know why it is, but, they don't want their kids to know a lot. It's like it's our business, not their kids' business. And I have a frank conversation with them and say, look, if something happens to you, your kids are going to be involved, right? I mean, who else is going to be making decisions? Usually it's the kids. So it's easier when the kids are involved by far. A lot of times kids will help pay for long-term care coverage because they realize the risk.
Right.
And maybe mom can't see it or doesn't want to part with their money, but maybe together they can cover this. And like I said, it's a great investment for anybody, whether it's the kids or the person that's going to need it, because it's like dropping a boulder into a lake. I mean, there's all these rippling effects. And when somebody needs care, it changes so many people's lives.
That's great. That's a great point. I love the boulder, the boulder thing, because it all does affect everything, and if you involve your kids, and you can kind of put together your dream team with your kids. Say you have one kid who's a little bit better financially, one kid who is, a little bit more level-headed, as far as making decisions like, hey, let's look at it this way. Maybe mom needs to go here, and then maybe you might have that one emotional one who is a little bit more skittish. So everybody kind of balances it out, and you build your dream team, out of your own kids.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially if you have more than one kid, because you're right. There's going to be kids that have different strengths. And what usually happens in a family of 3 or 4 is you're going to have one that's going to take the reins. And it's a lot of times it's by default, because the others just are like, you know what, I don't want to be involved in this, or, maybe they have too many issues on their own plate.
Sure.
A good friend of mine used to say all the time, for every family, there's a black sheep. And if you don't know who that is, it's probably you. And he's one of the responsible ones. So like his wife right now is going through where her parents are both in failing health situations. She's fortunately, she just retired. So she has the time, but she is probably 45 minutes from where they live. And she's spending at least 3 days a week up there, taking them to doctor appointments and, all these different things. Well, if it wasn't for her, how are those people going to get around? How are they going to get that help? They're going to have to pay for it. So again, if you involve your kids, I think it helps as long as, they're responsible kids.
Mike, you really seem like you enjoy what you do. What would you say is probably your favorite thing about doing the financial planning? Because you have a smile on your face when you're talking about it.
Yeah, I'm in a good position in my industry. I've been doing this a long time. I'm fortunate in the fact I've had some great clients over the years, and I've been able to see firsthand the benefits of their planning. When you get that kind of reward for your efforts. And, even Christmas time, I get a lot of different Christmas cards from my clients, and they're like, thanks, Mike, for all your help over the years. That makes it worth it. I like the challenge. I like having people come in and say, here's what I have, and everybody's unique. So it's not a cookie cutter, everybody goes into this or that or the other thing. I actually get to do planning. So when somebody comes in, it's like a puzzle. As I mentioned earlier, you get to kind of put it together, and everybody's puzzle is different. So, and there's no right or wrong way to do things. There's sometimes better ways to do it for people. And a lot of people, a big part of what I do is education. I don't try to talk anybody into anything. I educate them. And I say, based on your situation, here's your options. And, does one of these make the most sense to you? So for me, it's been a good way to do my planning over the years. And I don't have, people calling, upset with things, or, I didn't really need this. You talked me into it. I never have that, because ultimately it's my client that makes that decision with my guidance.
Ultimately, the biggest point out of everything that we've talked about is just get started. Just start somehow, whether it's, like you said, whether it's $100 a month, $20 a month, whatever, just do something to get started.
Yeah, I would say that, and figuring out, at the stage of your life, what's the most important thing? Is it, as I mentioned, creating income? The biggest challenge for most people that retire is, where do I get my income? I have my assets. I might have properties, or I might have mutual funds, or I have my 401k. Now what do I do, though? I need income. So I really enjoy that part. I have clients that have amassed a lot of wealth, but they don't know how to generate the income. And you don't want to take it all from one place. Typically, you don't want it all to be taxable. If you take qualified money out, 100% of that's taxed. Well, then if you start taking Social Security, you can have your Social Security tax, depending on what thresholds you increase your income to. It really is, for most people, figuring out at your stage what's the most important thing, and then acting on it, not waiting for a crisis to come up and force you to do it. Because when that happens, your options are just so much more limited. And then from a planner standpoint, there's very few things that we can do where, if we'd addressed that concern maybe a year previous, There might be a lot of things we could do.
Is it ever too late?
Well, I suppose there is a